You've tried positive affirmations, visualization, and motivational videos, yet you still freeze when opportunity knocks. The real problem isn't your lack of effort, it's your identity actively sabotaging your progress. Most people try to build confidence by adding new habits, but neuroscience reveals something counterintuitive. True transformation happens through strategic subtraction. Your brain has a built-in mechanism called identity homeostasis that keeps you trapped in familiar patterns. Today, I'll show you how to break this cycle using a method that creates space for who you're meant to become. Your brain is working against you right now. While you're trying to move forward, there's an invisible security system operating in the background, designed to keep you exactly where you are. This mechanism is called identity homeostasis, and it's the reason why motivation dies the moment real opportunity appears. Your brain treats your current identity like a thermostat setting, automatically adjusting your behavior whenever you try to step outside familiar territory. Think about that last time you felt inspired after watching a success story or attending a seminar. You probably felt ready to take on the world. But when Monday morning arrived and you had the chance to speak up in a meeting or pursue that opportunity, something pulled you back. That wasn't weakness or lack of willpower. That was identity homeostasis, dragging you back to your comfort zone, back to the version of yourself your brain recognizes as safe. Your neural pathways operate like well-worn trails in the forest. Every time you think, I'm not qualified or I don't belong here, you're walking that same path, making it deeper and more automatic. Self-doubt becomes the default route because your brain has traveled it thousands of times. Meanwhile, confidence feels foreign and uncomfortable because those neural pathways are barely visible trails, overgrown from lack of use. Consider someone who gets promoted to a leadership position. Instead of embracing their new role, they start making mistakes they never made before, second-guessing decisions or avoiding responsibilities. Their brain is unconsciously sabotaging their success to return them to their previous identity setting. They're not failing due to incompetence. They're failing because their identity homeostasis is correcting when it perceives as an error. This explains why positive affirmations often backfire. When you tell yourself, I am confident, while your brain knows you as someone who doubts, you create internal conflict. Your old identity fights back harder, generating more self-doubt to maintain the familiar version of you. It's like trying to heat a room while the thermostat keeps turning the temperature down. Traditional self-help approaches fail because they attempt to build a new identity on top of an existing one. But here's what they don't tell you. The old identity will always win. It has years of neural reinforcement, thousands of repeated thoughts, and the full backing of your brain's security system. You cannot layer confidence over self-doubt and expect lasting change. Instead, you must remove what's creating the doubt in the first place. The most powerful transformation tool isn't what you add to your life. It's what you systematically remove. Everything you've been taught about personal growth is backwards. Instead of piling habits and affirmations onto your existing identity, strategic disappearance creates an identity vacuum by deliberately removing the limiting beliefs, behaviors, and thought patterns that keep you trapped. This challenges everything you believe about growth. You've been conditioned to think transformation requires adding new practices, morning routines, and mindset shifts. But subtraction creates space for natural confidence to emerge organically without the internal warfare that comes from forcing change onto an unwilling identity. When you remove what's limiting you, what remains is your authentic capability. Strategic disappearance operates through 3 distinct phases. First, you identify the specific limiting patterns that reinforce your current identity. Second, you systematically remove these patterns without replacing them with anything else. Third, you maintain this void until your new identity naturally crystallizes in the empty space. This isn't about willpower or discipline. It's about creating conditions where transformation becomes inevitable. Neuroplasticity research reveals why this approach works. When you stop reinforcing neural pathways through repetitive thoughts and behaviors, those connections weaken and eventually disappear. Your brain literally rewires itself based on what you consistently remove from your mental landscape. The pathways that once generated self-doubt begin to fade when you stop walking those familiar trails. Consider someone who has always said, I'm not good at public speaking. Instead of adding affirmations about being a great speaker, they simply stop making that statement. They refuse to engage in self-deprecating humor about their speaking abilities. They eliminate behaviors that reinforce their identity as someone who can't speak publicly. This creates space for competence to develop naturally, without the resistance that comes from conflicting identities. This differs fundamentally from positive affirmations because empty space allows authentic confidence to grow organically rather than forcing artificial beliefs onto an unwilling mind. When you remove the source of doubt, confidence doesn't need to be built. It emerges naturally because there's nothing blocking it. Specific practices support this disappearance process. Thought interruption catches limiting beliefs before they take root. Behavior elimination removes actions that reinforce your old identity. Environmental changes reduce triggers that activate familiar patterns. These practices work together to maintain the vacuum where transformation occurs. Strategic disappearance works because it removes the internal conflict between old and new identity, allowing transformation to happen without resistance. Watch what happens when Sarah stops calling herself just an employee and removes every behavior that reinforces that identity. She eliminates apologetic language before sharing ideas in meetings. She stops deflecting compliments about her work. She removes the habit of positioning herself as the least experienced person in the room. Within 6 weeks, colleagues start treating her differently. Leadership begins consulting her on strategic decisions. The transformation happens not because she added confidence, but because she removed what was blocking it. The identity reset follows a predictable 90-day timeline with specific warning signs. Week 1 through 3, you'll feel disoriented as familiar thought patterns disappear. Your brain will generate anxiety because it can't locate your usual identity markers. Week 4 through 8 brings psychological backlash. Your old identity patterns will attempt to reassert themselves during stressful moments, generating intense urges to return to familiar self-doubt. Week 9 through 12, the new identity begins crystallizing in the space you've created. Recognition becomes critical during vulnerable moments. When you catch yourself thinking, I don't deserve this opportunity, or they'll figure out I'm not qualified, you're witnessing old identity patterns trying to reclaim territory. These thoughts feel urgent and true, but they're actually withdrawal symptoms from an identity you're removing. The key is recognizing these episodes without engaging with them. Daily practices maintain the subtractive approach without creating chaos. Each morning, identify one limiting thought or behavior to eliminate that day. When self-doubt arises, practice thought interruption rather than positive replacement. Remove environmental triggers that activate old patterns. Avoid people who reinforce your previous identity until the new one stabilizes. Personal relationships transform through similar removal. Mark eliminates people-pleasing behaviors that previously sabotaged his connections. He stops over-explaining his decisions to friends. He removes the habit of seeking approval before expressing his preferences. His relationships become more authentic because he's removed the barriers to genuine connection. Sustaining this new identity requires ongoing commitment to subtraction rather than falling back into additive thinking patterns. The moment you start layering positive affirmations or new habits onto your identity, you risk recreating the internal conflict that keeps you trapped. Long-term success comes from maintaining the space you've created. Successful identity reset creates permanent change because you've removed the source of self-doubt rather than covering it with positive thinking. This method requires commitment to subtraction over the long term, but the results are lasting transformation rather than temporary motivation. True confidence isn't something you build. It's what remains when you remove everything that isn't authentically you. Breakthrough happens when you stop trying to add positivity and start subtracting the beliefs that create doubt. Right now, identify one limiting belief you will strategically disappear starting today. Stop saying it. Stop thinking it. Stop reinforcing it through your behavior. Okay? Transformation begins with subtraction, not addition. Your current identity is not permanent. It's simply the result of patterns you can choose to remove, creating space for who you're meant to become.